Hello, and welcome to my final assignment podcast titled Between Black Feminist Theory and Gender Analysis for International Affairs, a Black Transnational Feminism for Sociology 3003, Black Feminist Theory. My name is Ethan Crandall, and in the next 16 minutes, I'll parallel topics of feminism from two of my fall 2025 semester courses, Black Feminist Theory and Gender Analysis for International Affairs. First, of course, I'll be delineating Black feminism and its many defining features. Next, I'll compare it with transnational feminism, as I learned about in my Gender Analysis for International Affairs course, noting particular interests in intersectionality, to ultimately understand how the two converge in what is understood as Black transnational feminism. From here, I will lay out this combinatory framework as written about by Kia M. Hall in its applications on the Black Lives Matter movement. I will round out this podcast with where Black transnational feminism can be found in a brief summary. Let's get into it, shall we? Black feminist theory is made up of the historical intellectual traditions of Black American women, with Patricia Hill Collins understands as a necessary activist response to the oppression that Black women face in their plural intersectional identities. As it serves as a critical social theory for Black women, it focuses on the social dynamics that affect Black feminine life in the pursuit of justice, whether socially, economically, politically, or otherwise. In the second chapter of her seminal work, Black Feminist Thought, Collins lays out 6 distinguishing features, with the first being oppositional knowledge to resist oppression. This point posits that Black feminist theory functions in opposition to dominant schools of thought and understanding, like patriarchy, misogyny, heterosexism, and more, in order to push back against the social injustice that affects everyone, especially Black women. Next, Collins emphasizes diverse responses to common challenges to say that despite Black women facing similar struggles, they do not all have the same life experience due to the myriad of factors, from housing to employment and geographic location, and this enriches the possibilities of problem solving. This defining feature's primary insistence is to say that, quote, no homogeneous Black women's standpoint exists. The third distinguishing feature of Black feminist theory is its existence as both a theory and a practice that derives from U.S. Black women's collective historical experiences with oppression that has led to a self-defined Black women's standpoint that in turn can foster Black women's activism. Fourth, Collins sees the recognition of Black women intellectuals and their work as a distinguishing feature. From writers to musicians, activists, and everyone in between, this section highlights the knowledge that Black women have, ranging from everyday thoughts to expert opinions. Collins here also takes space to emphasize the multifaceted importance of Black women intellectuals to Black feminism, with intellectuals here being understood as anyone willing to engage with a self-conscious struggle. For the fifth distinguishing feature, Black feminism is understood as dynamic and changing, with the awareness that, quote, as social conditions change, so must the knowledge and practices designed to resist them. These aforementioned Black women intellectuals continually develop new means of analysis for relationships, controlling images, and social dynamics as they evolve and become more varied. The final distinguishing feature is Black feminism's relation to other social projects. At the end of this chapter, Collins writes, quote, in a context of intersecting oppressions, Black feminism requires searching for justice not only for U.S. Black women, but for everyone, whether it be other international forms of feminism or liberatory movements relating to other identities and their intersections. Earlier in this chapter, Collins remarks that, quote, U.S. Black feminist thought fully actualized is a collaborative experience. It must be open to coalition building with individuals engaged in similar social justice projects. These were the 6 distinguishing features of Black feminist thought as laid out by Patricia Hill Collins. Next, I'll discuss transnational feminism and its central features as written about by Zerb et al. Transnational feminism is also understood as a critical social theory and practice that focuses on the diverse experiences of women who live within, between, and at the margins or boundaries of nation-states around the globe, with unique perspectives that transcend nation-state boundaries. Zerb et al., like Collins, has a list of central features that shapes this feminism. First is the goal of fostering transnational solidarity and collaboration between feminists, and valuing difference as a foundation for activism, which is not too unlike Collins' point on diverse responses. Also central to transnational feminism is its effort to highlight the perspectives of women whose voices have often been silenced, and having respect for differences, including recognizing global power differences and regional perspectives. Zerbins et al. Describes the ultimate goal of transnational feminism to be, quote, eradicating inequalities and centralizing the concerns and strengths of feminists from multiple world regions, especially the global south and marginalized women of color. They also mention the humility required by global north feminists in order to create productive transnational collaborative frameworks. Zerbins et al. Continues in this article by presenting briefer, central themes to transnational feminism, including, but not limited to, practicing reflexivity, crossing borders, and most interesting, quote, applying intersectional lenses. But what does this mean, and how do they pay homage to its origins? Intersectionality is an analytic framework that understands how different aspects of one's identity can nuance their locations of privilege and discrimination, originally configuring Black women in the analytic, but it has since transcended this ancestry. As a term, it was coined by Kimberly Crenshaw in her 1989 article titled Demarginalizing the Intersection, but builds on the epistemological backs of Black feminist writers before her, like Anna J. Cooper and Deborah K. King. Crenshaw uses this analytic to conceptualize the location of Black women as doubly marginalized and excluded from conversations of both sex and race. Since then, this analytic term has become popularized and moved beyond the boundaries of Black feminism, or, quote, traveled across disciplines. The debate around intersectionality's use beyond a Black feminist scope is more complex than I can articulate within the boundaries of this podcast, though Jennifer C. Nash writes about it in the second chapter of her book, Black Feminism Reimagined. But the term's ubiquity and popularity, as shown in its travel, is undeniable and is present even in transnational feminism. Nash goes on in her third chapter to describe how intersectionality and transnationalism are paralleled analytics that can also be envisioned as something to be embodied, among many other comparisons. To further analyze transnational feminism's inclusion of intersectionality, a look at the author's citing of Black feminist writers is curious to analyze. Zerbins et al. Cites both Collins and Crenshaw in writing about intersectionality, but does so without any meaningful recognition of Black women's labor in developing this analytic, and does not directly credit it as a product of Black feminist thought. This itself is proof of how intersectionality travels, as Nash wrote about, only this time without the politics of care for intersectionality's history and origin that Nash analyzes in this conversation of travel. Regardless of this citational storytelling, and as aforementioned, intersectionality has been diffused outside of Black feminism and is useful in many other instances, but generally without the say of how it should be used by those who developed this analytical framework. Moving forward, I'll describe how these two forms of feminism, Black and transnational, while already paralleled in their central and distinguishing features, also have a combined existence in the form of Black transnational feminism. In 2016, scholar Kia M. Hall wrote about this combinatory framework in both theory and practice by relating it to the Black Lives Matter movement. The four guiding principles of Black transnational feminism that she lays out include intersectionality, scholar activism, solidarity building, and attention to borders and boundaries. Hall explicitly notes intersectionality and solidarity building through citing bell Hooks's feminist theory from margin to center as extensions of Black feminism, whereas attention to borders and boundaries is more clearly from a tradition of transnational feminism. And the fourth, scholar activism, which seeks to use both scholarship and activism to help alleviate conditions of oppression, seems to be an inclusion found in both pre-existing frameworks. In prioritizing those four principles, Black transnational feminism effectively combines the pillars of its intellectual origins in Black and transnational feminisms. Kia M. Hall's practical analysis of Black transnational feminism deals with the activism and function of the Black Lives Matter movement in its relation to the four aforementioned guiding principles of this combinatory feminism. First, with intersectionality, Hall writes that the movement highlights Black lives generally, as well as those intersectional ones that are often forgotten: female, queer, trans, poor, and disproportionately segregated. She also notes that intersectionality has been critical to highlighting connections between diverse issues such as mass incarceration and mass deportation within the movement, helping to nuance and make sure that everyone is included, as well as in aiding in relation to other social projects, intersectionality takes a significant position in the BLM movement. With regards to scholar activism, Hall emphasizes that scholars and students have historically had a critical role in activist movements, and this is no different with Black Lives Matter and being started by three professional organizers, Alicia Garza, Opal Tometi, and Patrice Cullors. She also notes that BLM practices a form of activism that is typical of transnational feminists by reframing domestic violence issues in terms of international human rights, then going on to list examples of presumed scholar activists bringing the stories of Black American victims of systemic violence to international bodies like the United Nations. As seen in both Black and transnational feminisms, their scholarly work is not singular, but takes a tangible form in their activism as well. Next is solidarity building, which finds itself within the Black Lives Matter movement primarily in the adoption of united front rhetoric that has been present in previous generations of activism from the civil rights movement until today. This emphasis of collectivist thinking through mutuality, accountability, and recognition of common interests as the basis for relationships among diverse communities helps to parallel struggles and empower minority communities in solidarity when facing seemingly indestructible institutions. And finally, Hall describes the attention to borders and boundaries in the BLM movement in the context of transnational connections of activism. She writes, quote, social media campaigns like #Palestine to Ferguson connected the violent erasure of Palestinian lives in Gaza to the mistreatment of Black people in Ferguson and the U.S. at large. Transcending these physical borders and boundaries helps to connect international struggles and strengthen a framework's and a movement's relationship to other social projects, as well as encourage the aforementioned solidarity building. Hall rounds out this point and the practical analysis of Black transnational feminism of the Black Lives Matter movement with this quote, citing Janet Conway. BLM continues to be rooted in place-based transnationalisms that are particularly relevant to the movement-building transnational feminisms and the particular political challenges of negotiating place-based difference and constructing transnational feminists and emancipatory geopolitics. Despite its predisposition as a domestic social movement in the United States, Black Lives Matter extends itself transnationally to build solidarity across borders and boundaries using intersectional lenses in a doubly pronged scholar-activist manner. Beyond the analysis of BLM, Black transnational feminism has immense capacity in achieving a more equitable future. Kia M. Hall notes that, quote, the transnational Black feminist framework can also be used to explore the future potential of the Black freedom struggle and other liberatory movements. Like with ongoing mass incarceration and deportation, as well as formal and informal education. Not only does this potential exist, but it has already been capitalized on in some aspects. Columbia University's Center for the Study of Social Difference began a working group in 2019 titled Transnational Black Feminisms that has 2 co-directors and 6 fellows. In 2023, this working group partnered with the Barnard Center for Research on Women, which lists 13 participants from 7 universities and colleges, and has a podcast that explores the research and activism of its participants. Further, there have also been other articles published on Black transnational feminism, as well as a book published by Tanja J. Burkhardt in 2021. Though it's only a recently realized framework, Black transnational feminism has already grown considerably and seems to have a bright future ahead of it. In this podcast, I have described the emerging analytic of Black transnational feminism from its dual origins, contemporary application, and recent developments. Taking material from 2 of my courses this semester, Black Feminist Theory with Patricia Hill Collins' Distinguishing Features of Black Feminist Thought, and Gender Analysis for International Affairs, Use of Transnational Feminism as described by Zerb Enns et al. Black transnational feminism can easily be understood as the theoretical combination of the two with its own 4 guiding principles: intersectionality, scholar activism, solidarity building, and attention to borders and boundaries. I also explore the implications of intersectionality being understood from a transnational feminist perspective and the politics of siting as written about by Jennifer C. Nash. Though it only has a recent intellectual history within the last decade, Black transnational feminism has a promising future as seen through the growing work being done under this framework. As our world becomes seemingly more polarized and more connected, I'm sure that this solidarity building, scholar activist lens will become more and more necessary.